My name is Tu Huynh. Welcome to tonight's Artist Talk. I'm the Program Manager for the Office of Arts, Culture, and the Creative Economy. Tonight's discussion will be centered on our current exhibition, Dreams of Freedom, the Threads That Hold Us Together, organized by the Sankofa Artisans Guild with contributions from the Charles L. Blockson Afro-American Collection at Temple University Libraries and the Lest We Forget Museum of Slavery located in historic Germantown. There are 30 participating artists in the exhibit, and for the purpose of this talk, 4 artists have been gracious enough to share their thoughts and time. Before I introduce them, I should mention that this event and the exhibit are part of a citywide celebration of the 200th anniversary of the life and legacy of Harriet Tubman, which has been led by our office and began with the unveiling of the Journey to Freedom sculpture of Harriet Tubman on the north apron of City Hall. There have been over 40 events reaching over 17,000 audience members, and they've included talks, performances, tours, screenings, exhibits, and more. You can still catch the remaining programs by visiting our website, creativephl.org. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't mention how we haven't had an exhibit in City Hall in 2 years because of COVID. I can't tell you how exciting it has been to see the lights turning back on in City Hall and all the wonderful compliments from City Hall residents and visitors about this show. It's as if this show has brought life back to this building with countless visitors, over 500 students so far on our scheduled tours. It's restored a much needed sense of normalcy, and it's thanks to all of you. But that's not the only thing that it's restoring. The Art in City Hall program itself is making a comeback. In the most important civic building in this city, we again have art that's reflective of our shared values and representative of our diverse communities. It's art at the heart of our city, and in a city that's as civically minded as this one, our artists have always risen to the occasion to provide insight to not only our hopes and aspirations, but also what concerns us. That's why it's so critical that here in the People's Building, we continue to be a platform for cultural expressions and amplify our creative voices. The art from our communities matter. Now, the word Sankofa itself comes from the Akan people of Ghana, West Africa, and it literally means go back and get. So how appropriate is it that we have the Sankofa Artisans Guild reaching back into history and bringing new life to the stories of Harriet Tubman and our American past. Through the lens of art, history is made relevant again. So let me introduce you to our artists, Cassandra Gunkel, Maisha Sullivan Ongoza, Ramsses, and Veronica Mays. The co-moderator for this discussion will be Sankofa's president, Venetta Robinson. Cassandra Gunkel is a textile artist and printmaker. She's also a cultural researcher and presenter, and she's been most helpful with our student tours. Cassandra has 2 pieces in the show, a fiber piece called Greater Than Rubies, and an art book entitled Harriet's Freedom Journal. Welcome, Cassandra. Would you like to say a few words?
Well, thanks for having me. It's been a whirlwind.
Certainly has.
Yes. And I've really loved working with the students on Fridays because, the students bring what they are learning and what they know, and they ask such on-point questions. So it's been really invigorating interacting with the students. And I mean like 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders.
Right. Well, we have 8th graders this Friday, so hopefully if you're around, you can certainly use your help again. Now, this exhibit could not have been made possible without Maisha Sullivan Ongoza. She's our next artist. She was the person who proposed the show along with Cassandra, Gloria Davis, Asaki Jones, and Venetta Robinson. She served on the selection committee for the show. And as the students at the Sankofa Freedom Academy knows her as Mama Maisha. She has a quilt in the show called Keep Going. Please welcome Maisha Sullivan Ongoza. Hey, Maisha.
Hey, Tu, thank you again for the invite and to be a part of this discussion. I'm excited. This is all new to me, being in the exhibit and talking about art. That's never been something that I've done. So I'm excited and just so motivated because of the subject matter of being Nana Harriet Tubman. Is just so much about her life that continues to inspire and guide me. So I'm looking forward to this discussion.
Fantastic. And you've been a great asset when it comes to tours for the students as well, you and Mama Cassandra. So thank you for that.
Oh, I enjoy, working with children. I'm a retired educator, so I'm at my best. I know it when I'm with children. I just get so much. It's reciprocal, the love we have for each other, I think. And I've been enjoying, like Cassandra, the questions they ask, the level of engagement. I just been enjoying every time I do. Now I'm a docent. I can add being a tour docent to my with the
Yeah,
students.
let me continue on and introduce our next two artists. Now, they aren't members of the Sankofa Artisans Guild. He's the only male artist in the show. His very complex quote, simply titled Harriet Tubman, is among the favorites in the show. Please welcome all the way from Los Angeles, a very prolific artist, Mr. Ramsses. Welcome, Ramsses.
Well, thank you for inviting me. Hopefully you can see me. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, great. Can you see, can everyone see Ramsses? Great.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And finally,
His is the largest. His is the largest quilt.
Largest one. Yes, it is.
Yes.
It's the largest quilt, and it's also a favorite of, I'm not going to name names, one of the city council people whose office is just right across the hall from him. So, you know what? I'll go ahead and name names. It's Kendra Brooks. She loves his work. Finally, our last panelist has been a quilt maker since 2004, I believe. It's almost been 20 years. She's been honing her craft. She understands storytelling medium as well as anyone, and she has 3 pieces in our show: Freedom Papers, My Hands Looked New, and Lady Moses. Please welcome from Portsmouth, Rhode Island, Veronica Mays. Hello, Veronica.
Yeah, thank you to Tu. Thank you to the Sankofa Artisans Guild for opening this call up for others to be able to participate. I was so excited when I found out about it. I got right to work and I just kept going. Even beyond these 3, I created 3 more. Well, 5 more.
Wow.
Excellent. And you actually visited us just a week ago, did you not? All the way from Portsmouth.
Yes, artist reception. That was an amazing opportunity between the Harriet Tubman persona that was there and just the whole atmosphere and the statue outside. It was incredible.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. And now I guess we're going to get started. I'll have to introduce you to Venetta Robinson, the president of the Sankofa Artisans Guild. Before you begin, Venetta, I also want to mention that for our viewing audience, if you have any questions for us, and if we have time at the end, please write those questions in the chat. And should we have time at the end, we'll bring those questions back to life. Venetta, please welcome us. And before you begin your questions to the panelists, if you can just give us a few words about Sankofa, what it's all about, and how it all began.
We're an artisan group that started in 2019. It was just a group of friends and friends of friends who got together and decided to work on our art. Most of us were retired or were near retirement, and we wanted something to do.
Now this exhibit is your very first exhibit, is that right?
Yes, it's the first time Sankofa has put on an exhibit.
That's
and the
amazing.
first time we have an artist talk and all of that. And we had to get it together in less than 2 months.
Less than 2 months. That's amazing.
Which was a real challenge.
Yes, but it all came through.
Yes.
Everyone loves it, and the lights are back on. City Hall has been revived, thanks to all of you. And our expectations are very high now because of this wonderful exhibit to continue on. So thank you everyone for being part of this. Congratulations. So you want to go ahead and get started and ask the questions?
Yes. My first question to the artist: what inspired you to make artwork honoring Nana Harriet Tubman? And what does Harriet mean to you? I'll start with Veronica.
Thank you. When I saw the call for the artist, I was so excited because my mind immediately went to all of those things that I had learned about her in elementary school, about her growing up as Araminta, about her getting hit in the head and having these sleeping spells, but yet managing to fight on, about her following the North Star. Just everything came rushing in. And so I'm not even done creating artwork around Harriet Tubman, but it was very easy for me to say, pick me, and to just work on it to get it done because she's so significant. I can't imagine, I'll be really quick, walking or from here, Portsmouth, Rhode Island, to my hometown, Newport, Rhode Island, which is 7 miles under the cloak of darkness, hiding in the shadows away from dogs. So to go from Dorchester to Philadelphia or to Pennsylvania, it just blows my mind.
Yes. And Maisha, what inspired you to make a quilt honoring Nana Harriet Tubman?
Well, I was going to make something. I didn't know if it was going to
Okay.
be right. I work with different mediums, but I just felt that working with the textiles gave me opportunity to do some things. But her life, her life of sacrifice and her outward directedness, that she could have just, once she self-emancipated herself, she just could have went and lived her life somewhere, and this is, but she saw freedom as a collective thing, not an individual thing, and that she just kept going back. So that was really something for me to think. Most people would just been glad they got out of there and good luck and hope everybody else can make it on their own. But that she said she couldn't feel free unless more was free with her. And that reminds us of how, we are all tied in together. It's hard to be happy by yourself. It's hard to do a lot of things, and a good must be shared. So I always admired her for that, her tenacity, her ingenuity, and just her ability to keep going. That's why my quote is called Keep Going. That was one of her sayings, just keep going. No matter what, you hear this, keep going. And I use her when I'm really burdened and tired. I said, what would Nana Harriet do? What would she expect of me? So even to this day, she continues to guide me through some of my toughest time. I said, what would she do if she was here? And help guide me to always be focused on what's best for, not just for myself, but for those around me. Yes. So that's why I made this quilt. Mine's is kind of busy because she had so much going on, and it was hard to focus on just one aspect of what she did. And I just knew she just traveled all kinds of terrains, and she was in the Civil War, and she dealt with policy issues and places of power, so I just wanted to capture as much as I could about her life. And you see, none of mine has her as an individual except as the elder. She's always with someone else because she always went back and always thought about others. Yes. So that's why I did it. She's just a remarkable person. All aspects of her life is remarkable to me.
Good. Thank you. And I had that same question for Ramsses. What inspired you to make artwork honoring Nana Harriet Tubman?
Well, what got me started basically was January 23rd, 1976. And that was the day that Paul Robeson had passed. And I was shocked that I had grown up never knowing who Robeson was. So I started researching Robeson, and Robeson led me to Sojourner, to Harriet, to Frederick. These are people that I hadn't been exposed to in school. And I'm like, I can't believe I spent 18 years in school and never heard of Harriet Tubman, or have never heard of Paul Robeson. So that's why I've always tried to make artwork on African Americans who have accomplished so much, but yet have heard very little about. So she's just one of my heroes.
Oh, thanks. I don't know if you got frozen or not, but if you're not frozen, I noticed that I saw two, one quilt you have in the show and one quilt I had heard that you sold on Harriet Tubman. So I guess she really did inspire you a lot that you made at least 2 quilts on her. I guess he's frozen. So Cassandra, I would like to ask you the same question. What inspired you to make a Nana Harriet Tubman artwork?
Well, I must say, I have been making quilts to honor Harriet, quilts and other things to honor Harriet for a very long time. I was a Commonwealth speaker for Pennsylvania, and I traveled around the state talking about the Underground Railroad. So, when I look back in the quilts that I have packed away, I easily have 5, maybe 6 pieces that speak to Harriet Tubman or other African Americans who self-liberated. I'm actually sleeping under one that's made out of denim,
good.
and Harriet Tubman is one of the folks featured, along with my great grandfather. So, you know, in the way that I work, you know, I tend to either really like to improvise or go deep into history. So this particular exhibit was a moment to not just honor Harriet Tubman, but to enter into the conversations that our larger society was having about Harriet Tubman. A case in point, should she be on American money? What denomination? Et cetera, et cetera. So that's just a topic that's been ruminating with me for a very long time, about value and reparations, and you know, the value that our society has put on Africans since the beginning of settlement in this country. So I use this moment to talk about value and worth, and all the ways that our community, the greater society, historically and in the current moment, we valued her. So, you know, I use this to sort of exercise some of my demons, I'll put it that way, because I've done lots of literally lots of Underground Railroad quilts. But for me, this was a moment to go a little bit deeper into the issues surrounding how we want to remember her as a historical figure.
Okay. Now, I know you do other artwork besides quilts.
You bet.
But what
Yeah.
made you start with art quilts?
Art quilt gives me a lot of flexibility. I mean, it's part traditional quilting. Traditional quilting is just piecing geometric shapes, and that's certainly a part of my quilt. If you look at the two sort of green panels on either side of that middle there, but art quilts are a moment to also introduce other sorts of artistic techniques. So I have a woodblock print onto fabric at the top, you know, because there are a limited number of images of Harriet Tubman. And, you know, once you carve something out of wood and print it, that becomes yet another version of her face or of her body or of her person to be out there. So, you know, so a print was going to be one way because I like print. And then the middle, that's an image intending to represent Independence Hall in Philadelphia, which actually appears on the $100 bill. And, you know, I thought of ways to do it, and I just ended up sketching that with a black pen, the panel that's in the little image that's in the middle. And then at the bottom, those are digital images. I mean, I actually went through my files and pulled out imagery that I had that related to Harriet Tubman, such as an actual image of her and also an actual image of an African woman from the abolitionist movement that was used to promote abolition, you know, during the 19th century. So art quilts gives me a chance to, you know, integrate traditional quilting, which is evident there, as well as, you know, some more some other aesthetic, to make some other aesthetic choices, and then to add embellishments. I mean, you can add beads and buttons, and you can, you know, use thread to tie join your quilts. But I went through my collection of artifacts and I just threw some, and I selected some African pieces in particular that spoke to, again, the ways that African women in the African diaspora have been valued, or, you know, have been accounted for, or their worth has been mentioned, so to speak.
Thanks. And I don't know if the audience can see a picture of your quilt. I don't know if Ted has it up.
It's up. I can see it. Yeah, there's a quilt,
okay.
And also there's the artist book as well. So the artist book,
yes,
that's an accordion fold book. And it makes use of digital images. I should start at the beginning. Harriet Tubman was known to travel with images of people who might help her, you know, other Underground Railroad supporters along the way. Now, I don't know exactly what people she had in her, you know, images that she traveled with, but I assume, you know, from her time period, I used images of people who were her contemporaries who had either escaped or so there was information there that might inform her. So for example, there are images of Frederick Douglass. There's an image of Harriet Jacobs, who was an African-American woman who escaped from North Carolina after living in her grandmother's attic for 7 years. So she escaped north and then wrote a story about it. So I have images like that of people of her time period who had escaped and virtually lived to tell the tale, you know, had written stories about their experiences as slaves and so forth. And then one part of that, there's an image of the law, because, you know, Harriet Tubman, as well as anybody who helped her, you were breaking the law to do that, to participate on the Underground Railroad. This was federal law. So I have the slave codes, you know, what were the punishment, what was legal, what was not, what was illegal in terms of African people of African descent in this area. So, you know, I thought it would be a good idea for her to, I'm sure she knew what the consequences were, yet she went back again and again and again. So I use that moment not just to sort of showcase images of people who might have been with her, but also, you know, information that she would have been aware of as she was going back and forth all the times that she did, you know, travel from the North in freedom back into slavery in Dorchester, Maryland, to liberate members of her family and people that she knew there.
Thank you. Veronica, can you tell us a little bit about your history? Did you start off making art quilts, or were you into traditional quilts?
Tu said I've been quilting since 2004, which is true. But what happened was we left Rhode Island and we went to Alaska. My husband's a federal firefighter. And I wanted to work on my teaching degree and to learn how to quilt. So I learned traditional blocks and I made, I think, 2 quilts. And my daughters, we have 3 daughters, they were young. So I put most of that away for a long time. And then in 2015, I just picked it up and I started quilting. I looked at Aisha Lumumba's book, Scrap Easy, and I started making those ladies. And I didn't even know there was a difference until someone said to me, "You're an art quilter." And that resonated with me. And now I can't stop. So I do a lot of applique and a lot of free motion. I make a lot of art quilts that are wall quilts, not so much the big bed quilts or anything like that. So that's how I got started, was in Alaska, but we were there for 3 years. And like I said, about 6.5 years ago, I just picked it up and kept going.
Thank you. Maisha, I know you do a lot of different types of artwork. What inspired you to get into art quilts?
Well, I try and learn something new every year, you know, just a new technique, a new medium. And so I started taking a class that was held at Imhotep Charter on quilting, and it was traditional quilting. So I started taking the class there because I just always try and challenge myself to learn some new things. So that's how it started, you know, just as one of those years of what am I going to learn this year? And that class was available. And so I took that class and I, you know, I always sewed since I was about 7 or 8 years old. I always sewed, mostly, you know, garment making and making clothes for my dolls and making clothes for me and my younger sister. So I, you know, I knew how to sew and made things for myself for years, but I never was into quilting and didn't have a big interest in traditional quilting, just the geometric shapes and things like that. But when someone shared about art quilting and appliquing, then that perked my interest then. And so that's how it started. Just one of those years of trying to learn something new. And that year it was quilting. And then being around quilters, you know, being around you and Rashida Bay and some of the other quilters that were out there kept encouraging us. You know, we formed a little group And so it just, built on it and built on it. So that's how it was. It's just me, and I'm a perpetual student. So I'm always looking for something new to learn to do. Yeah.
Would you like to tell us a little bit about the other art forms you work in?
Well, I do carpentry. So I'm kind of self-taught with carpentry too, till I found some classes I could take. But in the beginning, it was all self-taught. And so I do carpentry. I made furniture. I make art pieces. Definitely my favorite is furniture making. And I've made public arts works because I made almost a 7-foot canada for the city of New York. They had it for Kwanzaa. I made their candle holder. So woodworking is one of my favorites, but I also work with polymer clay. That's another one of the mediums that I kind of enjoy working with polymer clay. I can work with a lot of different things. So I can jewelry. I make jewelry, beading and wire working. I do that also. So I just like, the multimedia aspects of incorporating all those different things into what I do. But basically, I think my first two loves now is the woodworking and the art quilts. It's moved up the hierarchy.
It's moved up.
It's moved up the hierarchy. And the rest I do. Yeah.
Thank you.
Hmm?
Ramsses, are you back? I'm not sure. He's muted.
Unmuted.
Okay.
How's that?
All right. Hi, Ramsses.
Hi,
I would like to know, how did you get started with art quilts?
Well, in LA, there was this group called African American Quilters of Los Angeles, and they were doing a show, and I saw their quilts, and I thought they were paintings. And as I kept walking up on it, the woman says, "No, those are quilts. They're pieced together." So I took a class from them, and that's how I got started doing the quilts. But I'm using the same technique that I use in stained glass. That's why the quilts look like stained glass pieces in a way. But my medium is
So
mosaic.
did you start off as a stained glass artist first?
No, I started out as a black and white cartoonist. And
okay.
that's elevated me to all kinds of different art, from mosaics to paintings to watercolor to, but right now I'm specializing in stained glass and quilts right now, but I'll put together, and I have over close to about 5,000 different images that I've done in the last 30 years.
Oh, you're real prolific. Okay.
Oh, I work all the time, all the time. I work probably 18 hours a day.
Wow.
Okay. Someone's asked, Ramsses, are you self-taught or did you take training anywhere in art?
My art classes, I was getting ready to drop out of high school at 16. And this teacher told me that if I came back to school in September, he would teach me animation, how to do cartoons. So I came back, and that was the beginning. I graduated and went on to junior college and got into the school newspaper doing cartoons. And it just kept elevating from there, learning new techniques, new styles, and then got a apprenticeship at the LA Times with 17 different artists. And that's where it kind of blew up. Okay. You should never be afraid to do anything.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
Would you like to tell us a little bit about the piece you have in the show? I think they have a picture up on the screen for the audience to see.
Yeah, talk about your piece.
That is my third Harriet Tubman piece. Each one I've done has been different. And this is the one I just happened to have when OACCE asked me if I would, make it available. So it had been in the case for about 2 years, and I pulled it out, and it still looked great. But
it definitely looks great.
I always like
and
to add
it's a fan
more
favorite at the show.
Oh, good. And the thing about her dress, each one of her dresses has always been different, because I've always wanted to add some color to her dress. And if you look at it close, there's a lot of subliminal messages going on behind her, because even those little things waving behind her, I consider those as part of the spiritual souls that are traveling across the country with her, along with the Underground Railroad behind the light.
Okay. And I know on the bodice of her dress is coins or money fabric.
I use everything. I don't throw anything away. You should see me pick up pieces off the ground, off the floor. This can go here. This can go there. I have so much material on the floor. I don't throw anything away. I just keep picking up pieces that have dropped and other pieces. So you'll see a lot of the same material in a lot of my quilts that I make, because I don't throw anything away.
Venetta, I have. Can I share something? So
Yes.
when I take children through the exhibit and we spend time with Ramsses' piece, of course I'm pointing out, and this was done by a man, and we have probably the most feminine representation of Harriet Tubman with like long painted nails, and I thought, for me as an artist and just as somebody looking, it's like so refreshing to see her as a woman, I'm sure she, in her lifetime, she never had painted nails. I'm fairly sure. But for us in the 21st century to see that, it's forcing us to, again, look at her as a whole person. She's a woman, as well as a conductor, a soldier, a nurse, and all that other stuff too. But she was a woman as well. So Ramsses, I thank you for bringing that perspective to your art.
Okay.
And also, when Asaki said that you were going to send a piece, I'm the ones you mailed it to, Ramesses.
Okay.
And so the first picture we had, the one you shared, I was just so excited about it. And then we get the news that you sold that one. I was like, oh, no. So she said, well, he said he had another one. So I'm like thinking, oh, well, this must be like second choice, third choice. I'm like, oh, I'm not looking forward to it. And so when it came in the mail and I opened it, I'm like, oh my, I just wanted to wrap myself in it. It was just so beautiful. But just to think, this was not your first choice to send us. You wanted to send us the one that you sold. And the quality of this one, I'm like, my goodness, he just got this stored somewhere. Like, matter of fact, well, I got another one. Maybe I can just send this other one. And to see something so beautiful, it was just really shocking. I was just expecting like second choice, pass me by kind of stuff, and this one came and it was just beautiful. I really like this one better than the first one you was going to send us.
Well, if I'm still on, the thing is that once you do it a few times, you only get better doing it. It's not about going backwards. It's like you keep adding more things, you see it differently, put more detail into it. So if I do a fourth one, it's going to be even awesomer than this one. And I'll make sure her nails are painted too.
Thank you.
Yes. And for people who have seen it in person, you have to get up close. And when you look at the pupils of the eyes, I saw that you stitched it. Because at first glance, I thought it was painted, but you did stitching.
Yeah. The ones I'm working on now, I get more detailed with the small little items like the eyes, the highlights on the lips, things that you probably wouldn't notice, but it's important that you put those little highlights in there. And even when I teach it, I tell them that, it's like building a car. You start with the frame, but when you finish, you put the headlights on it, you put the windshield on it, you put the chrome on it. Those are what pops it out at you more. So that's why I go when I'm thinking about doing the quilt. I said, well, let's make the frame first and then put the highlights. But the first thing I always tell people when I'm teaching the class is do the eyes first. Because if they're looking at you, everything else would be much easier for you.
Okay.
And to give people some perspective, this is like the size of a king size bed. This is how big this is. This isn't a small quilt. This is our largest in the show. And it's about the size of a king size bedspread. It's huge. It's just beautiful.
It's actually the height of the display case in the inside is 7 feet tall. So that is a little bit over 7 feet tall. His piece.
Because Yeah, because it's a little folded up down the bottom because it's
Yes.
longer than the display case. So it's a very, very substantial quilt.
And Ramsses, I must say that when the kids come through, we take turns with the kids and with the teachers standing up next to it to try and figure out, well, what size is that? And why did he make her that size? So we have wonderful conversations around your piece. I'm just saying.
Oh, well, thank you.
That leads me to the next question I have for the artist. And Ramsses, since you mentioned that the next ones you'll put even more on, when you're making a piece of artwork, when do you know it's finished? When do you say, okay, that's enough, I'm not putting any more on it, I'm not going into any more detail on the piece?
When I sign my name,
All
I stop. When I sign at the bottom, I stop. I don't keep
Okay.
adding, but that's when I know it's finished.
Veronica, how about you?
When do I know I'm finished? See, he's signing his at the bottom. I'm saying to myself, okay, have I said everything I think I wanted to say with this piece? Now that top piece, the Harriet quilt with the quilt over the back of the couch, I felt like, I don't want to sound too, whatever word, too weird, that I wasn't done and I hadn't put that quilt over there. And I thought, I got the image, I've got colors that I'm interested in using, but what else do I want to say? And I had sent the picture into OACCE and she had accepted it. And then I made that mini quilt and I sent it again and she's like, who is this? I've already seen this quilt. So she thought I was some imposter, but I just wanted to add that one more piece on there. When I recreated that quilt again for the Dorchester, I actually put maps in the background because of all the ways she was able to find her way back and forth, north and south. On the hands look new, I thought about the quote that she said. She looked at her hands to see if she was the same person. And in a lot of what we call Negro spirituals or African-American hymns, there's a line, I looked at my hands and they looked new. I looked at my feet and they did too. And so I just wanted to incorporate that feeling of what it must have been like to, yesterday I wasn't free, today I've set myself free. And since my slides are up, that third piece is a made up, it's called Freedom Papers with a question mark, because it always baffled me that as an enslaved person, you could have a piece of paper that said you were free, that someone had given you, and the person that you're giving it to, they may be able to write and read, and maybe they can't, they don't even know what it says. Or they could rip it up and re-enslave you with a new master. I mean, there's so much to it. And that is why that second signature says Stephen B.S. Mattingly, because the BS is for what BS stands for. And that's
I didn't
Oh, we know. Okay, that was.
I love that, Veronica.
Right.
Can you tell us a little bit about the technique of how you got the writing on the quilt?
on the bigger one.
On the
On the-
BS.
Okay, so I just did a whole cloth and I tried to find something that looked like aged paper, and I put we call it what, friction pen. It's a pen that when you write on fabric, it erases when you put an iron on it. So I wanted to make sure I had at least a little balance. And then I wrote on it and used my long arm to trace the letters. And then I pressed out the friction pen.
Thank you.
Mhm.
And Maisha, when do you know a piece is finished?
Ooh, okay. Well, this one was finished when the we said when the deadline was. So if I'm making something that has a deadline, I have to. That's when it's finished. I'm probably like right up to whenever you got to turn it in, because I may never stop. I'm one of them ones I always want to add on. I'm always searching for something, and I will keep if something doesn't put a boundary on me, I may not finish things. So I like So I realized I like doing things that has a time frame to it, because it forces me to say I have to stop. Other than that, I'll never be satisfied with it. I'll keep wanting to add on to it, take away, and you're never really satisfied. And I'm on best first name basis with my seam rippers, taking things. They all had names and stuff with the seam rippers, because I'm really never said, and I haven't made that many quilts in my life. I think I counted them. I only made 5 quilts, so I'm not really a quilter. This is a new thing for me to really get involved in. So I'm still learning, and so I'm never satisfied, and since fabric is so forgiving, you can keep those. Not like when I work with wood, wood is not as forgiving as fabric is. So having fabric be so forgiving, you can take something out, or you can change it, or you can paint it and make it do so much stuff to it. And so I'm liking the forgiveness of it, and some of the same things, techniques for that I work with wood transfers over to working with textiles, measure twice, cut once kind of thing, and that kind of stuff. So, but that's it. If I have a deadline, that's normally when I stop. I got to meet the deadline. Other than that, I probably will just keep going and keep this, like this quote say, keep going. I'd have keep going, keep adding. No telling how many scenes I may have had. It'd been as big as a Ramsses quilt if it wasn't a deadline to stop me, put some constraints on me. Yes.
So Maisha, I have a question for you, just to follow up on that. Your piece is very narrative. It's very linear and narrative. So does that tell you when you should stop, or when your narrative is complete, when your storytelling is complete or close to complete?
It is, because I'm one of the ones that start from sketches first. Okay. I sketch and I have different renditions of a sketch. So, I what the stories I want to tell, then how best to capture it. What's the image could capture these stories? So I wanted something from her childhood. That's down the bottom.
Right.
The scenes down the bottom is from her childhood. And then I learned while making this that her DNA was traced, the family's DNA was traced to Ghana. Mm-hmm. And so I put a African symbol there, and the Sankofa, which is our organization, but also because to me, she represents Sankofa. Sankofa is you looking in your past and coming forward. So she used her past, her father taught her, right? So she drew on what her father taught her about the water, the airs, herbs, all that. Her father was her teacher, but also, so she went back for what she learned in her, but she also went back physically. She kept going back to bring people forward, so she represents Sankofa. She kept going back and bringing people forward. And so I just thought that symbol was very important to have there. And the rest, is just telling different things about, terrains they went through, and being chased by dogs, and being in a civil war, and these seats of power, these icons of freedom up the top, these icons of freedom, Liberty Bell, but she's a human personification icon for me of freedom. So
what's
symbolism,
the piece that's on the very top of her in white? What is that a depiction of?
That's one of the oldest pictures of her in her elderhood, right? And she's wrapped in this lace shawl that Queen Victoria gave her. And so there she is in her elderhood. Even though she was older and all that, she's still at these seats of power. She was fighting for Black veterans getting their pension. She was support of reparations, the 40 acres and a mule. So she's still in these seats of power. And now that we're free and the Civil War is over, she's still fighting for Black people to get reparations, in a sense. She was a suffragist, the right for women to vote. So even in her elder years and the eldership, she's still fighting for a different level of freedom for people at these places of power, the White House and Congress and all these. And you see, she still has a gun, because one of the things people I read, they said she never, even as an elder, I have a rifle up there. They said even years later that she still kept a gun with her, because she always had this level of insecurity, that she kept a gun with her even in her eldership. And so I wanted to make sure, even up there sitting regal and all that, she still probably had a gun with her hidden underneath that shawl or something, you know? So that's it, you know. So I wanted to tell a story, and I wanted to capture so much of what she was doing, and I didn't want her to be seen in isolation, that she was always about others. She was outward directed towards other people, and seeing freedom as a communal thing, not just an individual thing. So I wanted that to come through in with this quote. But I had a couple of more scenes I wanted to add, but I didn't know where I was going to put them. So, but these were the ones I narrowed it down to. Yeah.
And I believe that picture is her up in Auburn, New York, where she had her senior nursing home for seniors.
Yeah, she turned her home into a home for veterans. So she just, up into her last breath, she was still of service, you know, to her last breath. Her home was a nursing home, and she made sure veterans could get a pension, and that she got a pension herself because she was a veteran of the war. But so she just was a remarkable a woman, and saw freedom in its wholeness, not as an isolated kind of, I got mine, you get yours kind of a thing. So, and this, she was Sankofa, you know, she just kept going back, bringing folks forward, and I just loved it. Yeah.
Okay, I know we're winding down on time, so I have a question to ask each of the panelists. This will be my last question. 2 statements. In the spirit of Harriet Tubman, what's your message to the youth today? And how should we preserve her legacy?
It's a good question.
So let's see. I'll start with Cassandra.
Well, her legacy is, of course, all that she accomplished in her time. We are her legacy. We who walk in freedom, are conscientious, are about giving back, are about caring for our community. That's her legacy for us. And that's what, you know, that is what I would want young people to know. You know, we know the big story, you know, she went back time and time and again to bring her people out of slavery. She self-emancipated, but she cared about her community. You know, we should not be surprised when we go to events and see her family. She was going back to save her family, and that continues her legacy. So we are her legacy. How we walk forward, how we march through life, how we care about our community, how we are active in freeing the many ways that we continue to be enslaved in our community, whether it's ignorance, whether it's economic ignorance, whether you know, healthcare ignorance. There are many ways that we continue to be enslaved, and I think her legacy is carry that freedom, carry that fight forward. She wasn't done. We're not done. So she's given us life. She's given us a model of activism, and we can only go forward from there. So I think that's her legacy. We are her legacy.
Thank you. Yes, we are. And I would like to know from each of the panelists, do you have an Instagram, Facebook page, or website that you would like to share with the audience?
I have a website. One of my first actions in COVID was to build a website, and it's cstanselgunkel.wixsite.com. So I do have a website.
Thank you.
Veronica just flashed hers. Veronica, can you do that again? Can you flash your website? Thank you.
I've got a website, a Facebook page, an Instagram, Twitter.
Oh, you're all over social media.
I've got young people in my life, so.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay, so is that?
So you can put it in the chat. Could you put it in the chat? People can see it.
That's a good idea. Put that in the chat.
I only have a Facebook page. You know, like I said, I'm just new to this kind of thing. I don't, you know, mostly I don't sell things, you know, there's still a hobby for me. So so I can be reached through the Sankofa Artisans Guild Facebook page and my own personal one that I have, but I have no website or anything like that. But I want to share one thing about you said, what would we tell children?
Yes.
You know, when doing these tours for children, right? So, and about her life and what kind of lesson can they relate to? So they always ask me things about children during that time, because I have a child and 2 children in my piece. And so they can relate to these children being enslaved. And I'm telling them about if you were enslaved, you would have to pick your weight in cotton. How much do you weigh? So we talk about things like that they can relate to. I said, you know how much cotton you have to pick and how heavy. But one of the things we were talking about, she kept going back, coming back. And I would say, but you know, she never was caught. She said she never lost anyone. I said, but she was never caught either. I said, so no one ever told on her. No one ever informed on her. She was so well loved and respected that no one told on her. So the children was like, you know, still looking like, okay. I said, I'm telling you, nobody never snitched on her. So when I used the word snitch, the children could relate to it, right? So then we having a whole discussion, because in our community, we got this thing about not snitching. So now we're discussing when you don't supposed to snitch and when you do. It's different ways of giving them some, you're supposed to snitch on people doing wrong and bad and harmful stuff, you know? But if you people doing good stuff I said she was doing good things. So talking to children on a level, how they can relate to her life and her sacrifice and what the climate was like then, and related to something now concrete for them now, it makes it real for them, you know? And so I just I'm enjoying finding ways to get them to connect to this exhibit and to connect to the discipline and the dedication in her life.
Yes.
So I think we're running near the end right now. So let me pull a couple of questions that I saw.
I would like to get,
you have one more question?
To that, I wanted to ask Ramsses, does he have any Facebook, Instagram, or website address he would like to share?
Actually, no, I don't have any of that. They just call me up when they want something.
Okay.
Too successful.
Thank
Word of
you.
mouth. That's how
You have 5,000 pieces. It's like that.
I do have an announcement to make, and this just came through just the other day because of popular demand, but also because of your permission, the permission of all the artists in the exhibition. We are extending this show to the 15th of April. I saw the question somewhere in the chat as well. So congratulations to everybody. The sculpture, Journey to Freedom, will end at the end of this month, but we are continuing on for another couple of weeks. Let me pull a question out that I saw in the chat, which goes back to the legacy question, just a tad. Is Harriet Tubman talked enough about in school, in your opinion? Do enough people know about her in school? What are your thoughts? Anybody?
I know she wasn't talked about when I was in high school, or junior high school. So that's one of the reasons why I try and push it whenever I'm out there with my exhibit, is that I put everything in note cards with the bios in the back of them. And I actually give them out to students so they take with them, so they have a piece of history that they're learning at the same time. So it's not just an image, but you're getting a history lesson on the back of the card. And I've been doing that for since my kids were younger, because they didn't know who these people were. So I said, I'm making cards and putting the bios on the back of them so you'll know who these people are.
Great. Okay, so there's a question about what exhibition we have that's going to be next after your show comes down. I think we're going to hold off on announcing that exhibit. That exhibit is still in a work in progress right now, but it's going to be a very meaningful exhibit. Again, working with our community partners to produce something here in the most important civic building in our city. So that's going to come after your show comes down, but just be on the lookout. Please follow us at Creative PHL. You can also visit our website, creativephl.org, to learn more about what we do, and also to look up all the different programs that are still happening as part of this 200th anniversary celebration of the life and legacy of Harriet Tubman. Any last words you want to say about Harriet Tubman for posterity's sake? I know this is a very short discussion. It drives me absolutely insane that there's only an hour to talk about art and history and how all these things connect with one another. But just anything you'd like to add to our conversation that wasn't asked?
I'll share something. One of the young students, as we were going through, said, do we have the Underground Railroad today? Do we need the Underground Railroad today? And that question came just as the war in Ukraine was kicking off. And we had an intense discussion, like right there in the halls of City Hall. And after a while, I turned to the teacher and said, you have a lot to talk about with these young kids. So kids are curious, and there are many ways to turn this very popular story of the Underground Railroad into helping us understand, young people understand, and old people understand what's going on in our world today. So I'll leave it at that.
And also when Harriet Tubman arrived in Philadelphia, the culture shock that she must have felt seeing an extraordinary free Black community that was living off the shoulders of Richard Allen and Absalom Jones and all those enslaved Africans from the 18th century, what they built here before she arrived, and all the abolitionists and the Quakers and the level of activism that was already in place when she arrived. It certainly nurtured her with William Still and Stephen Smith in New Jersey and Thomas Garrett down in Delaware. It must have been a culture shock, and it must have affected her greatly. But also to me, what's really incredible about her story is how small of an individual she was. That one person could have done all this in the dead of winter, crossing those icy rivers, And so how inspirational is that for our youth to know that one voice, one individual can make such an extraordinary difference, not just for her time, but still for today, 200 years later.
Yeah.
So that's my final word for Harriet Tubman. We are just about out of time. Thank you so much, everyone, for your participation. And I look forward to seeing anyone who hasn't seen the exhibit. Please come to the City Exhibit. It's located on the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th floors of City Hall. It's open during the week from 9 to 5 p.m. You just sign in at the northeast corner of City Hall and just say you're here to see the art exhibit. And it's been an absolute blessing to have City Hall revived in such a way. And it's because of all your artists. So thank you on behalf of our office, the Office of Arts, Culture, and the Creative Economy. Thank you.
We want to thank you too for how well you displayed our artwork and working with you as you just made
welcome.
it everyone, but it wouldn't have looked good if you didn't display it the way that you did. And so we appreciate that very much.
And I want to thank you for the time that you give to all the school groups that are coming through. I think that's truly a big blessing because that is reverberating in their classrooms and in their schools and ultimately throughout our community. So thank you very much for making yourself available to host the school groups that are coming through.
You're welcome. Thank you. And thank you for your participation in those tours as well. As well as the insights that all of you bring as artists to this discussion. History is not something that you just read in a book and put it down. History is alive and well today, and it's made relevant because of your artwork, your interpretations, that we can still learn more about Harriet Tubman than we think we need. She was not just someone who was involved in the Underground Railroad, but she, like Maisha said, she was involved in women's suffrage and so much more. So because of all of you, your insights, the arts has a way of finding new meaning to the past. So thank you again. And thank you for all of you for joining us.
Thank you.
And I would like to thank you too. I would like to thank Maisha for having this concept of this exhibition and all of the artists on the panel tonight and all of the artists that participated with their artwork at the show. And for the people who have not been there, I would like to say, there are other mediums besides quilts on display. We have dolls, we have mosaics, we have shawls, we have painting. So come out and see it. It's a variety of things, all dealing with Nana Harriet Tubman.
Thank you, Venetta.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye, everyone.